This is a list of cars that have lost almost all of their value, and I mean like all of it. We're talking about vehicles that once sat proudly in showrooms with sticker prices that represented a significant investment for the average family, but now trade for less than the cost of a new television. It's a fascinating and honestly, a little bit sad look at what happens when cars fall out of favor with the public. These aren't supercars or exotic luxury sedans that are notoriously expensive to maintain. These are everyday cars that, for one reason or another, have experienced depreciation so severe it's almost comical. So what makes a car's value plummet to near zero? Is it questionable styling, terrible reliability, or maybe the entire brand just disappeared into thin air? Well, today we're going to explore all of those possibilities and more. We'll dive into the quirks and features of 5 specific models that have become some of the cheapest cars you can possibly buy on the used market. It's a journey through automotive history, looking at the cars that time and the market forgot. And you might be surprised by what you find. Before we get started, be sure to like and subscribe to Random Facts for more deep dives into fascinating topics just like this one. It really helps out the channel and ensures you won't miss our future videos. We got a lot of interesting stuff planned, and you'll want to be here for it. Now let's get on with the list and explore these champions of depreciation. First up, we have a car that was once the symbol of affordable, top-down fun, the Chrysler Sebring. Specifically, the convertible model. Back in the late 90s and early 2000s, these were everywhere. You couldn't drive through a sunny suburban neighborhood without seeing one. It was the rental car of choice for vacations in Florida or California, promising a slice of the good life without the price tag of a Mercedes or a BMW. The idea was brilliant, a stylish, 4-seat convertible for the masses. The problem, as is so often the case, was in the execution. While the Sebring looked the part from a distance, up close, the reality was a bit less glamorous. The build quality was, to put it politely, not Chrysler's finest hour. Interior plastics felt cheap and brittle, especially after a few years baking in the sun, which, for a convertible, is pretty much its entire life. The panel gaps were inconsistent and things just had a tendency to rattle and squeak in a way that didn't inspire a lot of confidence in the car's longevity. And then there were the mechanical issues. The Sebring, particularly the second generation from 2001 to 2006, became notorious for a few key problems. The 2.7-liter V6 engine, which was a common option, is now infamous for oil sludge issues. If previous owners weren't incredibly diligent with oil changes using the exact right type of oil, the engine could, and often did, self-destruct in a catastrophic and very expensive way. This single issue has likely sent more Sebrings to the junkyard than anything else. The transmissions weren't exactly bulletproof either. Owners reported rough shifting, slipping, and outright failure, often at mileage that would be considered barely broken in for a more reliable car like a Toyota Camry or a Honda Accord. When you combine a fragile engine with a questionable transmission, you have a recipe for massive repair bills that can easily exceed the value of the car itself. And that's a key factor in depreciation. When the cost to fix it is more than the cost to replace it, the value hits rock bottom. Let's talk about the convertible top, the car's main selling point. When it worked, it was great. But the hydraulic systems and motors that operated the top were prone to failure. Leaks were common, both from the roof mechanism itself and from the seals around the windows. A convertible that lets the rain in is, well, not a very good convertible. Fixing these complex roof systems is a specialized and expensive job, another major deterrent for potential used buyers. The design also hasn't aged particularly well. What looked sleek and modern in 2002 now looks bulbous and dated. The soft, rounded lines of the second-generation model and the slightly more angular but equally unloved design of the third-generation model just scream early 2000s rental car. It lacks the timeless appeal of some of its contemporaries, and in the world of used cars, style, or the lack thereof, plays a huge role in desirability and therefore value. So you have a car with a reputation for catastrophic engine failure, unreliable transmissions, leaky and breakable convertible tops, and a design that's firmly stuck in the past. It's no wonder that these have depreciated so much. You can find driving examples for less than $2,000 all day long. But the risk you take is that a single mechanical failure could instantly turn your bargain buy into a very large, very inconvenient lawn ornament. It's a classic case of a car that was built to a price, designed to look good on the showroom floor and for the first few years of ownership, but without much thought given to long-term durability. The market is ruthless, and it does not forget. A reputation for poor reliability is one of the hardest things for a car model to shake, and the Sebring's reputation has followed it all the way to the bottom of the value curve. This is why, when you see a Sebring convertible on the road today, it's often in a state of visible disrepair, a faded top, a cloudy headlight, a bumper held on with duct tape. These are the survivors, the ones that are still limping along because they are so cheap to buy that people are willing to put up with their many flaws. But as a long-term investment or even a reliable daily driver, the risk is just too high for most people. Ultimately, the Chrysler Sebring convertible is a perfect storm of depreciation. It hit all the wrong notes: poor reliability, a dated design, and high potential repair costs. It's a lesson in how a car's initial appeal can be completely erased by its long-term reality. And for that reason, it has earned its spot as one of the fastest depreciating cars of its era. A sun-soaked dream that quickly became a financial nightmare for many owners. Next on our list is a vehicle that is, without a doubt, one of the most infamous and controversial designs in automotive history, the Pontiac Aztek. When this thing was unveiled in 2001, the public reaction was not just negative, it was visceral. People were genuinely offended by its looks. It was a mishmash of plastic body cladding, awkward proportions, and a front end that looked like two different cars had been smashed together. It was, and still is, a masterclass in how not to design a car. The Aztek was actually a fascinating and forward-thinking concept. It was meant to be the ultimate vehicle for active young buyers. Pontiac called it a sport recreational vehicle. It had a massive, versatile interior, a rear center console that doubled as a removable cooler, and even an optional camping package that included a custom-fit tent that attached to the back of the vehicle and an air mattress. On paper, it was a brilliant idea, a crossover before crossovers were really a thing, but nobody could get past the styling. It was a commercial disaster for General Motors. They had projected sales of up to 75,000 units per year, but they never even came close to that number. The Aztek became the butt of every automotive joke, a rolling punchline that symbolized everything wrong with GM's design process at the time. The sheer ugliness of the vehicle overshadowed any of its practical and innovative features. Because of its spectacular failure in the showroom, depreciation hit the Aztek immediately and brutally. It was one of those cars that lost a massive chunk of its value the second it was driven off the dealer lot. Dealerships had to offer huge discounts and incentives just to get them to move. Nobody wanted to be seen driving one. Its reputation as one of the ugliest cars ever made was sealed, and that reputation has stuck with it ever since. Over the years, something strange happened. The Aztek developed a cult following. A new generation of buyers, who weren't around for the initial shock and horror, started to appreciate it for its weirdness. And of course, its prominent role as Walter White's car in the critically acclaimed TV show Breaking Bad gave it a massive boost in cultural relevance. Suddenly, the Aztek wasn't just an ugly car, it was an iconic ugly car. You would think that this newfound fame and cult status would cause its value to stabilize or even increase, right? Well, not really. While a pristine, low-mileage Aztek from the show might fetch a premium from a collector, the vast majority of them are still dirt cheap. Why? Because despite its cult following, it's still an early 2000s General Motors product, with all the baggage that comes with it. The interior, while versatile, is a sea of hard gray plastic that is prone to cracking and fading. The build quality is typical of the era, meaning lots of squeaks and rattles. And while its V6 engine is generally considered to be fairly robust, it's the old GM 3400 V6, a real workhorse. The rest of the car can be plagued with the typical electrical gremlins and component failures of a 20-year-old vehicle. Furthermore, the very thing that made it a sales flop, the design, is still a major hurdle for most buyers. Yes, it has a cult following, but that cult is still a very small portion of the overall used car market. For every person who finds the Aztek ironically cool, there are 100 people who still think it's just plain ugly. And in the mainstream market, that's what dictates value. So despite its utility and its strange brand of fame, the Aztek remains a depreciation champion. You can easily find them for sale for just a couple of $1,000s. They are often used as cheap work vehicles or winter beaters, cars that people buy for their practicality without caring at all about how they look. The tent package is a cool gimmick, but how many people are actually using it? The Pontiac Aztek is a rolling paradox. It was a brilliant idea wrapped in a hideous package. It's a famous TV car that's still nearly worthless. It has a cult following but no real market value. It serves as a powerful reminder that in the automotive world, you can have all the clever features you want, but if the fundamental design is a failure, the car is doomed, and that financial doom is why it has a permanent place on this list. Our third entry is a car that replaced a beloved and successful model, but failed to capture the same magic, leading to a swift and brutal depreciation curve. I'm talking about the Dodge Caliber. When it launched in 2007, it had the tough job of replacing the Dodge Neon, a car that, while not perfect, had a reputation for being a fun, affordable, and surprisingly capable little car, especially in its sporty SRT4 guise. The Caliber was meant to be a more modern, versatile replacement. It was styled to look like a small SUV or a crossover, with a high roofline and a chunky, aggressive stance. Dodge was trying to cash in on the growing popularity of SUVs by making their compact car look like one. It was a hatchback, offering more practicality than the old Neon sedan. On paper, it seemed like a reasonable idea. Combine the economy of a compact car with the styling and utility of an SUV. Unfortunately, the reality of the Dodge Caliber was deeply disappointing. The first and most glaring issue was the powertrain. The standard engines were paired with a continuously variable transmission, or CVT. This particular CVT was one of the early unrefined units that gave the technology a bad name. It made the car feel sluggish and unresponsive, and it produced a loud, unpleasant droning sound under acceleration. It sapped all the joy out of driving. Performance was poor across the board unless you sprang for the very rare and expensive SRT4 version. The base models were slow, noisy, and just not fun to drive. This was a huge departure from the peppy and tossable Neon it replaced. Fuel economy, which should be a strong suit for a compact car, was also mediocre. No better than many larger sedans and even some actual compact SUVs. So it had the performance of a bad compact car, and the fuel economy of a small SUV, the worst of both worlds. Then we get to the interior. Oh, the interior, it was a truly dismal place to be. The design was bland and uninspired, but the real crime was the materials. It was constructed almost entirely from hard, hollow-feeling and easily scratched plastic. It felt cheap even when it was brand new. Sitting in a Caliber felt like sitting inside a giant Tupperware container. There was no sense of quality or craftsmanship whatsoever. This cheapness extended to the overall build quality. Owners reported endless squeaks, rattles, and vibrations. Parts of the interior trim were known to fall off. The suspension components were prone to premature wear, leading to clunking noises and poor handling. It was a car that felt like it was designed and built with the absolute minimum amount of cost and effort, and it showed. Because of all these shortcomings, the poor driving experience, the awful interior, and the questionable build quality, the Caliber never developed a strong following. It was seen as a soulless appliance, a car you bought because the dealership gave you a good deal on the financing, not because you actually wanted one. It was a purely transactional vehicle, devoid of any passion or desirability. And when a car has no desirability, its value on the used market has nowhere to go but down. And down it went. The Caliber depreciated at a staggering rate. Within just a few years, it was worth only a tiny fraction of its original sticker price. There was simply no demand for a used Caliber when there were so many better options available from Honda, Toyota, Mazda, and Ford. Today, the Dodge Caliber is one of the cheapest ways to get into a relatively modern-looking hatchback. You can find them for pocket change, often less than $3,000 for a running example. But the reasons they are so cheap are the same reasons they failed when new. They are still unpleasant to drive, the interiors are still cheap and nasty, and their long-term reliability is a gamble. The Dodge Caliber stands as a monument to what happens when a car company misreads the market and puts out a cynical, low-effort product. It tried to look like an SUV but offered none of the real benefits. It was a compact car that wasn't fun or economical. It's a case study in automotive mediocrity, and the market has punished it accordingly with one of the most severe cases of depreciation you'll ever see. For our fourth car, we're not just talking about a model that lost its value, we're talking about a car from an entire brand that ceased to exist. This is the Saturn Ion. Saturn was launched by General Motors in the 1980s as a different kind of car company with no haggle pricing, friendly dealerships, and cars with dent-resistant plastic body panels. For a while it worked. People loved the Saturn experience. but by the early 2000s the magic had faded, and the products were falling behind the competition. The Saturn Ion was launched in 2003 to replace the original and much-loved S-Series. Like the Dodge Caliber replacing the Neon, the Ion had big shoes to fill, and it stumbled badly. The Ion was built on GM's new Delta platform, which it shared with the Chevrolet Cobalt. However, it was saddled with a number of bizarre and poorly received design choices that made it stand out for all the wrong reasons. The most infamous feature of the Ion was its center-mounted instrument cluster. Instead of having the speedometer and tachometer in front of the driver, they were placed in a pod in the middle of the dashboard. The rationale was that it was cheaper to produce for both left-hand and right-hand drive markets, and that it was supposedly easier for the driver to see. In reality, drivers hated it. It was unnatural and distracting to have to look to the side to check your speed. The rest of the interior wasn't much better. It was another classic example of early 2000s GM cost-cutting. The plastics were hard and cheap, the fit and finish were poor, and the overall design felt flimsy. The seats were uncomfortable and the ergonomics were strange. It was a significant step down in perceived quality from even its Japanese rivals of the time, like the Honda Civic and Toyota Corolla. The early Ion models also had significant issues with their electric power steering system, which felt vague and unnatural. And then there was the transmission. The base models could be had with a 5-speed manual, but many were equipped with either a 5-speed automatic or a CVT, both of which developed reputations for being unreliable and expensive to repair. These powertrain issues further tarnished the car's reputation. A particularly strange version was the Ion Quad Coupe, which featured a set of small, rear-hinged back doors, similar to a pickup truck's extended cab. While a neat idea for improving access to the back seat of a coupe, it was another quirk that failed to win over mainstream buyers. The Ion just felt like a collection of weird ideas that didn't quite come together into a cohesive or desirable car. Then, in 2010, the unthinkable happened. General Motors discontinued the entire Saturn brand as part of its bankruptcy restructuring. This was the final nail in the coffin for the Ion's resale value. When a car brand is shut down, it creates immense uncertainty for owners. Where do you get it serviced? Will parts be available in the future? This uncertainty spooks the used car market, and values plummet overnight. Overnight, every Saturn Ion in the country became an orphan. There were no more dealerships, no more factory support, and no more brand identity. It was now just a used car from a dead company. This, combined with its existing flaws, the weird interior, the questionable reliability, and the uninspired driving dynamics, sent its value into an absolute free fall. Today, the Saturn Ion is one of the most forgotten cars of its era. You can buy them for practically nothing. I'm talking about prices well under $2,000 for cars that still run and drive. They have become disposable transportation, cars that are driven until they suffer a major failure, at which point they are immediately sent to the scrapyard because any significant repair would cost more than the car is worth. The Saturn Ion story is a sad one. It represents the decline and fall of a once promising American car brand. It was a flawed product from a company that had lost its way, and its ultimate fate as an automotive orphan has cemented its place at the very bottom of the depreciation ladder. It's a car that both the public and its own parent company eventually abandoned. For our final car, we have a model that didn't fail because it was shockingly ugly, or because its brand disappeared. It failed in a much quieter way. It simply faded into complete and utter irrelevance. This is the 9th generation Mitsubishi Galant sold in North America from 2004 to 2012. This car is the definition of automotive anonymity. It is so bland and forgettable that you've probably seen 3 of them today and not even noticed. Mitsubishi has a history of building some truly exciting and legendary cars. The Lancer Evolution, the 3000 GT, the Eclipse. The Galant nameplate itself once belonged to a cool all-wheel-drive turbocharged sports sedan, the Galant VR4, which was a rally-bred hero. The 9th generation Galant, however, shared none of that excitement. It was designed to be a mainstream, mid-size family sedan to compete with the Honda Accord and Toyota Camry. The problem was that it did absolutely nothing to stand out in the most competitive automotive segment in the world. The styling was exceptionally generic. It's not ugly like the Aztek, but it's not handsome either, it's just there. It's the car a video game designer would create when they need a background traffic car and don't want to pay for licensing. It has no distinguishing features, no memorable lines, nothing. The driving experience was similarly beige. It was perfectly competent but completely uninspired. The ride was soft, the handling was numb, and the engines, while reasonably reliable, offered no sense of urgency or fun. It was transportation in its purest, most sterilized form. It got you from point A to point B without any drama, but also without any joy, style, or personality. The interior was spacious, but, like the Dodge Caliber, was a festival of low-grade plastics. While perhaps a small step up from the Caliber, it was miles behind the quality and refinement you'd find in a contemporary Accord or Camry. The design was simple and functional but lacked any sort of flair or premium feel. It felt like a car built to a budget, and that budget was tight. Mitsubishi's brand image in the US was also weakening during this period. They were moving away from their performance-oriented roots and struggling to find a new identity. Dealerships were closing and marketing support seemed to dry up. The Galant was left to wither on the vine, a forgotten soldier in a war that its manufacturers seemed to have already given up on. As a result, sales were slow, very slow. While Honda and Toyota were selling hundreds of thousands of Accords and Camrys each year, Mitsubishi was lucky to move 20,000 or 30,000 Galants. It was a bit player, a background character in the mid-size sedan story. And when a car is unpopular when new, it's destined to be completely unwanted when used. Depreciation was, therefore, rapid and severe. There was simply no reason for a used car buyer to choose a Galant over an Accord, Camry, or even a Ford Fusion or Chevy Malibu. All of its competitors were better in almost every measurable way. They were more refined, had better interiors, were more enjoyable to drive, and had much stronger brand support and resale value. The Galant had no unique selling proposition. Today, the 9th generation Galant is nearly worthless. It is one of the cheapest mid-size sedans you can buy. Running examples can be found for less than the cost of a new set of tires for a modern SUV. They have become the go-to choice for people who need the absolute most car for the absolute least money and care nothing for image, performance, or quality. The Mitsubishi Galant story is one of quiet failure. It didn't go out in a blaze of glory or infamy, it just slowly fizzled out. It's a reminder that in a competitive market, being merely adequate isn't good enough. You have to give people a reason to choose your product. The Galant gave them no reason, and so the market forgot it ever existed, and its value disappeared along with its memory. So there you have it, 5 cars that represent the absolute bottom of the barrel when it comes to holding their value. From the mechanically fragile Chrysler Sebring to the iconically ugly Pontiac Aztek, the cheap-feeling Dodge Caliber, the orphaned Saturn Ion, and the utterly forgettable Mitsubishi Galant. Each one tells a unique story of failure, whether it's a failure of design, engineering, marketing, or in some cases, all of the above. It's a brutal look at how the free market sorts the automotive winners from the losers. These cars are a testament to the fact that building a car that people will still want to own 10 or 20 years down the line is incredibly difficult. It requires a combination of timeless design, solid engineering, and a strong brand reputation. The cars on this list missed the mark on one or more of those fronts, and their rock-bottom prices on the used market today are the direct result. They are the ghosts of the automotive world, still roaming the streets but having lost almost all of their original worth. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever owned any of these cars? Or maybe you owned a different car that depreciated into oblivion? Share your stories in the comments below. I love reading about your personal experiences with these vehicles. And as always, if you enjoyed this deep dive into automotive depreciation, please give this video a like and make sure you're subscribed to Random Facts so you don't miss what's coming next. Thanks for watching.